see you and be live, and it's wonderful.
It's different. There's stakes. There's real stakes. And it's also technically all the things that I'm handling, and there's performance. So
you think you know Tom Cruise? Yes, he's Hollywood's golden boy. The fearless action hero. The man who literally hangs off planes and buildings for real. But do you know that behind that million-dollar smile lie some dark and disturbing truths? Scandals buried deep and swept under the rug for years. Over the years, there have been whispers of manipulation, a mysterious religion, a secretive romance, and marriages that ended in the most scandalous way ever. The question is, what really goes on behind the scenes of Tom Cruise's picture-perfect world? And why does everyone try to stay silent about it? Tom Cruise before fame. Tom Cruise is literally Hollywood royalty. He's the star of Top Gun, Mission Impossible, and Jerry Maguire. He's always smiling, always polished, never has public meltdowns, and has no jail time. Nothing like that. He's known for his dedication, his stunts, his charm, his weirdly ageless face. But Cruise also has something most celebs don't, and it's control. He controls his brand with military precision, and there's a reason for that. It turns out that there are some major secrets that Tom doesn't want out in the public. One in particular is so bad that it could wreck everything. His reputation and years of hard work down the drain. But let's go back to where it all began. Before the private jets, before the red carpets, and certainly before he became Hollywood's most unstoppable action star. Tom Cruise grew up in a broken home, with a secret struggle and a dream that almost died before it ever began. And perhaps that's where he learned how to mask his struggles in the public eye so effortlessly. Tom Cruise was born Thomas Cruise Mapother IV in Syracuse, New York, on July 3, 1962. His name might sound fancy, but don't be fooled. His life was far from luxurious. Tom actually grew up in poverty, moving constantly from city to city and state to state. By the time he was a teenager, he had lived in different places and attended 15 schools in 14 years, and it was all his father's fault. Tom later revealed that his dad was a bully, a control freak, and straight-up manipulative. In one interview, Tom didn't hold back. He said he was the kind of person where if something goes wrong, they kick you. It was a great lesson in my life, how he'd lull you in, make you feel safe, and then, bang! For me, it was like, there's something wrong with this guy. Don't trust him. Be careful around him. That pain never left Tom. And, unfortunately, it shaped so many things about the Hollywood legend we know today. To make things worse, Tom struggled with severe dyslexia. Reading was a nightmare. School was hell, and the teachers thought he was lazy, but he wasn't. Instead, he was just a kid who couldn't read and felt trapped in a super chaotic life. Do you know that at the age of 14, Tom seriously considered becoming a Catholic priest? He even attended a seminary school. Unfortunately, after a while, he got kicked out after he was caught stealing liquor with friends. Well, it turned out that priesthood just wasn't his calling, and he fell in love with something else, acting. But getting to Hollywood was far from easy, and the hustle became real. After high school, Cruise didn't have a backup plan. He wasn't rich, nor did he have powerful family connections. However, what he did have was raw ambition, determination, and a killer jawline. He moved to New York City, where he took up different odd jobs just to survive. He auditioned for different roles while waiting for that big break, yet he kept getting rejected. Until finally, he landed a tiny role in Endless Love. And once he got this little opportunity, he seized it completely. That same year, he played a military school cadet in Taps. And that's when people began to notice him. 2 years later, Tom finally got that massive break. It was 1983, and the movie was Risky Business. Remember that famous scene where Tom is sliding across the floor in his socks and sunglasses, dancing in his underwear to old-time rock and roll? Yes, that moment made him a star. The movie was a massive success. The box office loved him. Teenage girls put his poster on their walls. And just like that, Tom Cruise went from a struggling actor to Hollywood's golden boy. If Risky Business put him on the map, then Top Gun made him a global phenomenon. Tom played the role of Maverick, the cocky Navy pilot with a need for speed, and everyone fell in love with his character. The film wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural moment, and from that point forward, he never slowed down. What followed was hit after hit, and by the mid-90s, Tom Cruise wasn't just a movie star. He had become a brand, a powerhouse, and one of the most bankable names in the industry. But Tom didn't stop at that. He wanted more. He wanted control. And so, he created his own empire, Cruise and Wagner Productions, which he co-founded with his agent, Paula Wagner. And together, they produced films like Mission Impossible. But even after being at the peak of Hollywood, there was still something about Tom that made him intense. He never looked relaxed, never seemed chill, almost as if he was constantly chasing the next big thing. Everything seemed perfect with Tom on the outside until it just wasn't anymore. Somewhere between the Oscars, the marriages, and the mega hits, the cracks started showing. The awkward interviews and the infamous couch-jumping moment. But it was his affiliation with a certain organization that changed him forever and almost blew everything up. Tom's introduction to Scientology. While Tom Cruise was still fresh off the success of Top Gun, and while his face was everywhere, he met Mimi Rogers, the woman who would change his life forever. She was older, wiser, and even already successful in Hollywood, and they immediately clicked. Mimi wasn't just another love interest. She felt deeply connected to him, and that's how she introduced him to a core aspect of her lifestyle that would completely consume Tom Cruise later in life. They met in 1985. They got married in 1987, and from the outside, they looked picture perfect. But behind the scenes, something really disturbing was unfolding. Mimi Rogers introduced Tom to the Church of Scientology. Just in case you didn't know, Scientology is a religion that was started in the 1950s by a science fiction writer named Ron Hubbard. It teaches that people have a spirit, called a thetan, that is separate from the body and mind. Tom wasn't just curious about the church, he was hooked. He reportedly began doing auditing, a kind of spiritual counseling Scientologists use to clear negative memories and trauma. He dove deep into the church's teachings, and from there, it escalated fast. Tom Cruise wasn't just another recruit. He was exactly what the church wanted. He had it all. He was young, famous, charismatic, and a rising icon. Basically, he was someone who could give Scientology mainstream power, and they reportedly went all in. Some inside reports had it that they treated him like royalty and gave him VIP access. In return, he gave them loyalty. However, by 1989, just 2 years into their marriage, things began falling apart. And by 1990, their divorce was finalized. Mimi Rogers has always played it classy, but years later, she said something that revealed a lot. Tom was seriously thinking of becoming a monk. At least for that moment in time, it looked as though marriage wouldn't fit into his overall spiritual needs. With this statement, it was pretty clear that Tom had become a man who was being pulled deeper into something, and that thing was Scientology. Some inside reports claimed that Tom's obsession with the church began to take over the marriage, and he and Mimi began drifting further and further away. And just like that, his first marriage was over. After the divorce, Tom didn't walk away from Scientology. In fact, it was only the beginning. Church leader David Miscavige reportedly made it his mission to become Tom's best friend, advisor, and protector. They traveled together, ate together, and Miscavige even stood next to Tom at his wedding to Katie Holmes years later. Inside reports revealed that Tom was no longer just a celebrity member. He was their chosen one, and with that status came influence. Insider reports revealed that Tom was surrounded by handlers, also known as assistants, who were actually church members. His relationships, his homes, and his decisions are all allegedly filtered through Scientology's lens. There were even rumors at some point about the church holding auditions just to find him a new wife and hand-picking, grooming, and training these women just so his personal life could be on brand. But there was a problem because it turns out that this relationship with the church began costing him. It cost him friendships and work relationships and led to controversial feuds. In fact, every romantic relationship he had afterwards led to an even bigger and more disturbing scandal: Tom's second marriage to Nicole Kidman. After the heartbreak with Mimi Rogers and his deepening ties to Scientology, you'd think Tom Cruise would have stayed single for a while, but he didn't, because just months after his divorce was finalized, he was already filming a new movie, Days of Thunder, and that's where it happened. Tom met Nicole Kidman. She was young, gorgeous, mysterious, and Australian. They both fell hard for each other, and in the media they looked like the perfect match. Within a year, Nicole Kidman went from rising Hollywood star to Mrs. Tom Cruise. But some people just couldn't look past the fact that something about their romance felt strange. When Tom and Nicole got married on the Christmas Eve of 1990, the press went wild. The tabloids called them Hollywood's power couple, and fans were in love with them, but behind the glitz and glamour, things weren't so perfect. At this point, Tom was already deep in the Church of Scientology, and Nicole, on the other hand, wasn't exactly on board. In fact, her father was a psychologist, a profession the church openly despises. And so, numerous reports revealed that Nicole was always seen as a threat. But Tom didn't mind. He was in love. Some say he even pushed her into the church and got her to try auditing, read the books, and take the courses. And for a while, she played along. But it wouldn't last. Tom was constantly working, constantly on set. And when he wasn't acting, he probably spent his time with the church. Nicole, on the other hand, wanted normalcy. She wanted stability, a real marriage and real time as a couple. Then the rumors began circulating that Tom was being followed by Scientology handlers and that the church members were reporting back on Nicole's behavior. And that said when it got dark. In 2001, after 10 years of marriage, Tom Cruise filed for divorce out of nowhere, leaving Nicole Kidman completely shocked and blindsided. This wasn't a normal breakup. There were no warning signs, no public fights, and no cheating scandals. At least none that the media heard of. So why exactly did Tom walk away? Well, Tom cites irreconcilable differences as the official reason for the divorce. However, rumors had it that Scientology played a massive role in the divorce. The church allegedly viewed Nicole as a suppressive person, which is basically someone who is considered negative and dangerous to a Scientologist's spiritual path. And so, it's no surprise why the relationship had to end. Nicole Kidman later opened up about the marriage, saying that the experience damaged her. "That was a great relationship," she said. "I think it ran its course. In the aftermath, I was really damaged and not sure whether love and marriage were ever going to happen again to me." She also confessed that she made a lot of sacrifices for Tom and the marriage, saying, "I was never seeking to be a celebrity, but I was prepared to do that for love. It's hard when you're young, but I'm ready to give up anything for love, because ultimately, that is what you have." After the divorce, Nicole's relationship with their two adopted kids, Isabella and Connor, changed drastically. The two kids stayed with Tom and stayed inside Scientology, while Nicole was left to walk away, alone. In interviews, she never trashes Tom or the church. However, it's clear how hurt she is, mostly because, according to the church, once you're outside the church, you're no longer welcome by church members, no matter the relationship they share with you. The moment Nicole left, it seemed like Tom's bond with Scientology only grew stronger. But the truth remains that what happened with Nicole wasn't a one-time story. It was the beginning of a long and extremely disturbing pattern for Tom Cruise. After his marriage to Nicole came Katie Holmes, and what happened in this marriage sent chills down the spines of everyone. But before Katie Holmes, there was Nazanin Boniadi, an Iranian-British actress who became one of Tom Cruise's secret relationships and perhaps one of the most disturbing chapters in his personal life. According to a shocking documentary titled Going Clear, released by HBO in 2004, Nazanin was recruited by Scientology for a secretive project, which was to find Tom a suitable girlfriend, one that met all the standards. The reports had it that she was groomed, asked to break up with her boyfriend, whom she was hoping to marry, change her appearance, and undergo intense Scientology auditing before she was eventually introduced to Tom. But this soon turned into a nightmare. After a few months, she was abruptly cut off with no explanation, just silence. Tom's team treated her as if she had done something unforgivable, and Nazanin was sent to do punishment labor at a Scientology center in Florida. She was reportedly isolated, humiliated, and emotionally scarred, all because she couldn't meet their impossible standards. Her story paints an extremely chilling picture of what can happen when someone is caught in the crossfire of Tom Cruise's and the Church of Scientology's unyielding grip. However, the church reportedly denied the allegations and even tried to prevent it from escalating to the public. Despite what happened with Nazanin and how controversial it was, nothing could have prepared Hollywood and the media for the extremely disturbing outcome of Tom's marriage to actress Katie Holmes. The Tom and Katie Holmes scandal. Do you know that when Katie Holmes was just a teenager, she told 17 magazine that she dreamed of marrying Tom Cruise? She said, "I have had a crush on him since I was 15, and his posters were on the walls of my bedroom." This was nothing more than a harmless celebrity crush, however. Fast forward to 2005, and that dream literally came true. But what Katie didn't know was that dream would soon become a nightmare, and she would have to risk everything, her career, her child, and even her freedom, just to escape it. When they met, Katie was the sweet girl next door from the movie Dawson's Creek, and Tom was at the top of his game in Hollywood. Within weeks of meeting, they were everywhere. They were pictures of them laughing in Paris, holding hands in Rome, and making out on the streets of New York. And then, the extremely controversial couch incident on the Oprah Winfrey Show happened, where Tom literally jumped up and down on Oprah's couch while yelling about how much he loved Katie. This turned out to be one of the most controversial incidents in Tom's career. Some thought it was cute. However, others couldn't look past the fact that it was a little shady, especially considering the fact that they had just met weeks ago. To make matters worse, Katie Holmes suddenly announced to the world that she had converted from Catholicism to Scientology. And that's when things began to get dark. Behind the scenes, the rumors started swirling that their entire relationship was set up by the church, just like what happened after his marriage to Nicole Kidman. Some rumors even claimed that Katie Holmes was one of several women quietly auditioned for the role of Tom's new wife. Actresses who were allegedly told they were reading for a role without knowing that the real role was becoming Mrs. Tom Cruise. Immediately they got together. Tom, who was 16 years older than Katie, didn't waste time. He proposed under the Eiffel Tower just 2 months after they met. It was all too sudden, and most people couldn't help but wonder what the rush was about. However, they were still adored by many. But behind closed doors, the pressure was building. After the engagement, something suddenly changed. Katie's clothes got more polished, and her interviews became quieter. But what got people super concerned was when she fired her longtime manager and publicist and replaced them with people tied to Cruise and Scientology. She hired Tom's sister as her publicist, and this fueled the rumors that she had begun losing control of her career and her life. It seemed like everything in her life was being controlled by the church. In April 2006, a year after she and Tom met, Katie gave birth to a daughter, Suri Cruise. Some reports even stated that her delivery wasn't a normal one. They claimed that Katie allegedly gave birth in total silence, which was in line with Scientology's silent birth guidelines. You see, the The church believes loud noises during labor can traumatize the baby spiritually, and so Katie had to go along with it. When Suri finally appeared in the tabloids after months of being kept away, she was healthy, gorgeous, and perfect. However, some sources close to the situation revealed Katie wasn't happy. They said she was reportedly being followed by Scientologists, her calls were monitored, and her decisions were questioned. But here's where things took a darker turn, because after Suri's birth, reports revealed that the church began pressuring Katie to enroll her in Scientology schooling and early auditing. And that's when Katie had enough. She wanted Suri to have a normal upbringing instead. And this caused major tension with Tom and with the church. By 2012, Katie had had enough, but she knew divorcing Tom wouldn't be easy. Because leaving Tom also meant leaving Scientology, and that was an extremely hard thing to do. And so, Katie began working on her extremely detailed and chilling exit strategy in total silence. She used burner phones to contact lawyers and family, just so her calls couldn't be traced. She secretly rented an apartment in New York, under a different name. And then she took the bold move that shocked everyone. Katie filed for divorce while Tom was in Iceland filming Oblivion. And guess what? She also filed for sole custody of Suri, because she didn't just want out of the marriage, she wanted the legal authority to be able to protect Suri from Scientology. After Katie filed the papers, the media exploded almost immediately. Tom had reportedly been blindsided, and it was the first time he had been dumped without as much as a warning. Katie literally vanished overnight with Suri and went off the grid. It was one of the most calculated, clean, and daring exits Hollywood has ever seen. In just 11 days, the divorce was finalized, and Katie got what she wanted: full custody of Suri, and Tom got visitation rights. Now, here's the complicated part. Katie had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that prevented her from speaking publicly about Scientology or Tom's personal life. And so, to this day, she has never said a word about what happened inside that marriage. Some say that's the price she had to pay for sole custody of Suri. But romantic relationships and marriages are not the only things Scientology has cost Tom. He's had to let go of so many important people and things for this belief, and he has found himself in some terrible feuds and scandals as well. Tom's feuds and the psychiatry scandal. Tom Cruise has had to sacrifice a lot for the sake of his religion, friendships, work relationships, and basically anything that stands in the way of Scientology, and some of his decisions have left fans and the general public in shock. Perhaps one of the most controversial was when he randomly fired the one person who had stood by his side in Hollywood for many years. You see, back in the early 2000s, Tom Cruise was untouchable. He was fresh off box office smashes like Mission Impossible 2 and Minority Report, and he had achieved all that success with a decade-long partnership with one of the most powerful publicists in Hollywood, Pat Kingsley. She was the woman who kept his image bulletproof, the one who made sure the press only saw what they were supposed to. And it worked for a long time, until it didn't anymore. Tom started changing when he began getting deeper and deeper into Scientology. At some point, he didn't want to hide it anymore, and he wanted the world to know. But Pat Kingsley didn't quite agree. She had spent years keeping his beliefs private, focusing the spotlight on his career, not his religion. But now, Tom wanted full control, and that's where things blew up. In 2004, Tom fired Pat Kingsley after 14 long years of managing every single inch of his public life. When asked why that work relationship ended, Pat said, "I'd had so much control over everything. I think he wanted to be more personally involved in all those decisions. He felt, look, it's been 14 years. I think it's time I tried something different." And I certainly had no quarrel with that. It was his life, his career. It was not working. I was not having the rapport. I felt a kind of pulling back, and I knew it was going to happen. She also revealed that Scientology played a big role in the end of the relationship, especially after she had a conversation with Tom, telling him to take a step back with the whole Scientology thing. Tom eventually replaced her with his sister, Leanne DeVette, who happened to be a devout Scientologist. And from that moment on, his image was no longer in the hands of a public relations professional. It was basically in the hands of the church. And things got messy really quickly. Once Pat was gone, there were no breaks left, and Tom started speaking out very loudly about things most celebrities wouldn't dare touch. The biggest one was his extremely controversial take on psychiatry. In 2004 and 2005, Tom Cruise went on a very public crusade against the entire field of mental health treatment. He called psychiatry a pseudoscience and said that antidepressants were dangerous and that there was no such thing as a chemical imbalance. But this wasn't just his opinion. He was on a mission to fight. He started name-dropping medications, criticizing doctors, and calling out the entire mental health profession as corrupt, useless, and toxic. And let's be very clear, he didn't make this call by himself. This was actually Scientology doctrine. The church had always been aggressively anti-psychiatry, and its most famous member suddenly became its mouthpiece. Then came the incident that worsened everything. It happened on the 25th of June, 2005, on The Today Show. Tom sat across from Matt Lauer and delivered one of the most infamous interviews in modern Hollywood history. It started off fine, but then Matt brought up Brooke Shields, who had spoken openly about using antidepressants for postpartum depression. And that's where things got ugly really fast. He called Brooke Shields irresponsible for promoting the medication, and he told Matt he didn't understand the history of psychiatry. That's not all. He accused him of being shallow, saying that vitamins and exercise were better solutions than antidepressants. He basically laughed at the idea that chemical imbalances even existed. Matt pushed back at Tom, and the whole thing escalated into an extremely uncomfortable situation real quick. Tom came off as arrogant, condescending, and completely off-brand from the Tom Cruise everyone thought they knew. The backlash was immediate, and his reputation was hit with one of the most damaging scandals he ever had to deal with in his career. People were stunned, critics were furious, and of course, mental health advocates were appalled. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more awkward, Tom went after someone else again. This time around, it was Steven Spielberg. Tom was starring in War of the Worlds, Spielberg's massive sci-fi blockbuster. It should have been an easy win. But then the press tour turned into a PR nightmare. Once again, Tom went off script, and this time he began attacking psychiatry in front of Spielberg, who had been working with mental health professionals on the film's themes of trauma and fear. To make matters worse, Spielberg had just had a personal experience with psychiatry. A close friend of his had benefited from treatment, and he found Tom's anti-medication rants deeply offensive. But it didn't stop there. Behind the scenes, word spread that Tom had reportedly gone after a psychiatrist who was connected to Spielberg, and some Scientologists had gone to protest outside the doctor's office. Spielberg was furious, and their friendship was never the same again. After the Matt Lauer mess, the Brooke Shields drama, and the Spielberg embarrassment, Hollywood started quietly pulling back. It wasn't just about Tom believing in something different. It was about how aggressively he pushed it, how combative he became, how he seemed completely out of touch with reality and immune to basic PR strategy. To this day, some people believe Tom isn't just a Scientologist. He's their golden boy, their weapon, and maybe even their biggest victim. Because when everyone's telling you you're perfect, you lose touch with who you really are. But what do you think? Has Tom Cruise been manipulated by the very church he's devoted to? Or is he simply the master of his own destiny? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting videos.